Hello and welcome back if you're joining me again here today, and a really big hello if you're new to finding my channel. I'm Lisa, I'm a vintage inspired seamstress and dressmaking teacher, and today I want to talk to you about the reasons for my name Bobo Bun, which is my name across all my socials and my business name. It's rather a lovely story, so I can't wait to share it with you. Now I'm going to introduce you to a very important figure in my life. This here is Bobo. There's little feet here. I mean, poor Bobo really does need some attention. It's been suggested I go on the repair shop. I could probably cry when I tell the story of her. She is, I think, a year younger than me, but bless her, she's in bad shape now, but very loved toys end up this way. So I shall pop Bobo on my lap while I tell you the story. So this story predates my business when I was trying to think of what to call my business in, I think, about 2003, when I first started designing and making my wares. The inspiration comes from my nanny Daisy, who died when I was about 6.5. She was the most fabulous lady. I don't have many photos. I will pop up the ones I've got, you know, from when I was very little, when she was in my life, you know, when I was a baby and a small child. My mum says Daisy and I were the best of friends, and she feels so sad that I didn't get to know her better, you know, and continue through more in life, because I think she was about 74 when she died of cancer. She was an incredible lady. My mum was the youngest of 7. So Daisy was born around the turn of the century. I don't have the exact dates for her, but she was born around the turn of the century in Norfolk, so she was a country girl. And as was the way in those days, you know, young girls, young boys went into service, you know, in the main. And Daisy got a job in London in a big house as a nursery maid. So it was a lovely job, but she was 12 when she got this job and had to go to London. I mean, 12 then was probably a very different age, but I'm sure they were still like children, you know, they finished school early, and I don't know that they could have been that much more mature than a 12-year-old today, but probably were, because they had to bring up all the other children and whatnot. I'm digressing. It just makes me feel very sad to think of this 12-year-old on her own having to go to London. But very kindly, her employer allowed her to take her pet rabbit with her. So whilst I don't have photos, I always have this image of this 12-year-old girl standing on a train platform with a wicker basket in her hand with her rabbit with her. And I'm just so thrilled that she was able to take a friend with her to London. And she lived and worked in London, and she married in London. The man who she married, I presume, probably met through coming to the house. He was a butcher, so he probably did deliveries to the house. And they had 6 of their children. My mum was the 7th. They had 6 of their children in London. And when the war came, the bombing was getting so bad that they moved out of their house for a couple of weeks just to get away from everything. And when they returned, they found the whole house had been ransacked. Everything had been stolen. You know, and they weren't wealthy people anyway. And Mum always said that, you know, Mum, she called her obviously Mum because it was her mum. She said Mum never ever rebuilt her home again. She was mortified, but it was obviously a compliment that she heard somebody in the local market town talking about my nanny Daisy and saying Daisy Hardwick will always give you a cup of tea even though it's only in a jam jar. And obviously for a young girl, Mum found that very embarrassing, but it just showed the hospitality and the lack of, I can't think of the word I want, you know, my nanny didn't care about appearances. She just wanted to be warm and loving. That was her absolute essence, but she was amazingly strong. I know all of this from her. I felt it as a child, and I know it looking back over her life. So having lost everything in their house, the only choice was to come back to Norfolk. So they took the train. I think it was a 2-mile walk from the train station, because Mum said her older sister Pat was carrying, who was 12 at the time. Ironically, yeah, she made the journey back at the same age that her mum had first left. She was carrying the younger children on the 2-mile walk to stay with Nanny's, one of her sisters, but obviously they'd got lots of children and it was a squash. So I think that was a very temporary thing. And then they found this hut to live in on a old, well, this wasn't an old airfield, it's an airfield that was in use at the time, you know, with mud floors. And there were tales of, you know, when German planes were firing at the airfield, you know, it was strafing in the hut as well. They were all having to lay under the table. And so, yeah, extraordinary times. And then they finally got a council house. It was 2 council houses, you know, semi-attached. Semi-detached, up on a hill, a few miles walk out of Reetham, the nearest market town. But, you know, countryside all around, it was really lovely. A well out in the garden, you know, the outside toilet, you know, so it's all very old-fashioned. And I have one memory of visiting my nanny, because there's always pansies, you know how the old people used to plant them, you know, with one, loads of soil around. There's rows of pansies, that was her favourite flower, and sweet williams. So whenever I get those, I think of Nanny. And I remember her bedroom being covered in these bright pink roses and a bright pink bedspread. And Mum said that she decorated it for her, and they were just really big, bold roses. I wonder if that's where my love of floral prints comes from, and pink. And the other thing was that you'd always go to this tin that was on the windowsill, and it was covered in clay with all shells stuck in. One of my cousins, because I had 12 cousins, I was the youngest. They'd obviously made it, and that's where she kept all the like Milky Ways and Mars bars and things, so then I could go and choose a sweet. But they were my memories of her house, you know, the one that they moved to. Anyway, when I was born, I was adopted. My parents met my birth mother while she was pregnant with me, and then I was handed over when I was 10 days old. They went and met me when I was born at 2 days old. When I was a year old, my nanny gave me Bobo. She'd asked her sister Hilda to knit Bobo for me, and Mum said she was attired in the most beautiful felt outfit. I think it was a tramp's outfit, you know, with a hat. I was a year old and I ripped the entire outfit off, squeezing Bobo to me, jumped on the sofa and just shouted Bobo, and that's what she became. And Nanny knitted this little outfit so that she'd have some clothes. And there was also a navy with red trouser suit as well, but I don't know what happened to that. But Bobo was my firm friend from then on. And you can see the link with the rabbits here. The rabbits becoming very important. Because I was adopted, Mum said it was like Nanny felt the most sorry for me. She felt like I needed more love than all her other grandchildren. So that kind of set our bond. I don't know why she felt, because I had a mum and a dad and I was as loved as any other child, but yeah, it set our bond, you know. I always remember playing Animal Snap with her, and she used to sort of pretend she was going out to put the kettle on so that I could look under the table to see where my favourite, the mice cards were, and then I'd always get them. But we were firm friends, we shared many a memory, and I know when she went into hospital, she was going to then come back and live with us, and she would have slept in my bedroom until we'd moved house. And I remember the last evening, me sitting on my bed, her on her bed, and we were eating bowls of bright pink ice cream. It's probably not as bright pink as I remember it, because the childhood memories of like just really highlighted everything. But yeah, I just remember the pleasure and joy sitting there, us eating ice cream together, not saying a word, just felt good in her company. And when she died, I mean, I had been allowed to go to the hospital and see her, and then the nurses said that I was too young to go. But I don't remember ever finding it frightening. I just remember going around seeing all the other old ladies there and getting sweeties off them. And but yeah, suddenly one day my nanny had died, and I remember Mum crying. She was about 31 at the time, crying in bed when she'd received the news from her oldest brother. And me saying, "Why are you crying, Mummy?" Because I didn't understand it. And she said, "My mum's died." But But I don't remember how I processed that. But all I do know is from then on, Bobo never left my side. She was always wedged under my arm like this, flopping away, and off I would be walking. And I remember at infant school, we were going on a picnic, you know, up the field with jam tarts we'd made. And the teacher, Mr. Hamilton, I still remember his name, the ones that did you a disservice, you always remember their names. Mr. Hamilton said to me, Lisa, take your toy back. So I walked off back to the school and then came back with Bobo still under my arm. I was not letting her down. She was obviously the embodiment of my nanny who I'd lost. But, you know, this is the 70s. No one was thinking about how a child might be processing grief and loss. And obviously I didn't know and couldn't communicate it either. It's just me looking back over this. And he was obviously very angry because he's coming from his adult view and his lack of understanding. And I remember in the village walking with my mum, and he pulled up in his Mini, rolled the window down, and very sharply told my mum how he was cross with me and I needed to be told off and this toy should not be coming to school anymore. I'll never forget that. So yeah, all had quite an impact, but it shows how important Bobo is to me. So when I came to set up my business, when I'd left lecturing English literature, we'd moved back to Norfolk from Brighton, and I was a mum of 2 young girls, so I'd got a baby and a toddler, Rosie a toddler and Millie was a baby, and I wanted more, you know. I was returning back to my art college roots of textile design and creativity, and I'd always been making and sewing in all those years anyway. So I decided to start making bags and accessories and toys and whatnot. So I needed a name for my business. And in the end I settled on Bobo Bun, linking with the love of the rabbits and my Bobo. Because for me it encapsulated what is handmade. It's handmade with love, handmade with joy. These are things that will last you through your life. They're vintage inspired, they come with stories and joy. The name Bobo Bun sums up all of that for me in my creativity, and it's my nanny Daisy living through that also. So as you can see, it's a very important name. I know many people would think, what on earth's Bobo Bun about? But I think it's a lovely name. Obviously, the English teacher, I like the alliteration of the 2 B's because that's easy to remember. And I know there's a story with it. I've also, these are the last 2, but I started making my own rabbits, which I used to sell. This one's Flora, and this is Bobby. These are the last 2 I've got left. These are their little tails and their hunting jackets. And underneath here is a little felt heart sewn onto their chest to give them life, and their little booties. But we kept these 2. So I made my own versions of the Bobo Buns as well. So once I set up my sewing school last year, I really needed a strong brand identity, you know, to put across business cards. I wanted to put it on tote bags, you know, for my letters, my website, just everything, as you can imagine. And I was exploring various ways of getting this done, speaking to friends who are illustrators if they could do it for me. And then out of the blue, I won a branding package from the lovely Ailing at Pretty Content. I was absolutely thrilled. You know, this is like over £1,000 package, you know, consulting what I wanted, getting a feel of my business, my brand, what I want to project. And yesterday, all the work was done and Ailing sent it in to me. Totally nailed my colour palette of the creams, the pinks, the reds and the turquoise, my favourite colours, and what sums up the vintage, the fresh, the joyful, the fun. I'd said to her, I know a brand is normally about business, but my brand is me. I'm the business. People come for the fun that I inject and the stories I tell, the skills and the knowledge, the support I give. That's everything people come to my classes for. So I need to convey that. So she's designed the most fabulous bee with the curl at the top in the pink, you know, to represent the bunny ears. We've got the little lady with the like bunny hat, the red lips, the glasses. I wanted the needle coming in, and then I could put a strap line of whether it's sewing school, sewing club, vintage inspired seamstress, you know, whatever underneath. So yeah, she really delivered the goods, so I was just so excited to see that. And I've obviously got it in lots of colourways. I can use it, you know, in any of those brand colours, so it's time to start playing with those. So I'm just checking my notes to see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you. So that's the story behind Bobo Bun, where I got my name, why rabbits are really important. And yes, of course, I had pet rabbits growing up, and then when I had my children and we moved to our cottage in the countryside, we had 4 rabbits. We had George and Lucy, who were the most beautiful little dwarf rabbits. They lived together. And then we had Blossom, who was my Millie's rabbit, but she couldn't say "bleh," so she called her Glossom, which was always so sweet. And then we had Pixie, that was Rosie's rabbit. And we had 3 guinea pigs. I had got 2, but one came pregnant. Unfortunately, it was a girl I gave birth to. And we had chickens, and we had our little black pug called Alfie Blue, and we had 3 cats and goldfish. Yes, so we had quite a menagerie when we lived in the countryside. And when we finally only had 1 rabbit left, Pixie, in the end we used to let her just run free in the garden. So it was fun and games every evening with the girls and I coming in at all angles trying to like grab her so we could put her back in her hutch safely for the night. But she had a lovely time running free in the garden with the chickens, and Alfie just plodding about, the cats all mind their own business. They were happy days. I'd still very much love to be living in the countryside, even though we live in the city now. But one day we will return back to the countryside and I will have my chickens and my rabbits again. So thank you for listening to my story. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background so you don't turn up and think, sweet name, but whatever it's about. So thanks very much. If you enjoy my videos, normal sewing content will resume next time. I don't know if I'll be able to put a video up for you next week because we're off to Paris on Wednesday to see the Schiaparelli exhibition. Yay! All booked, tickets for the exhibition, everything's sorted. So I might be able to squeeze in filming a video towards the end of this week. There's a little bit of sewing related content, but who knows? I shall do my best, but if not, I will see you in 2 weeks' time with all my catch-up news. So please comment away, like, subscribe or share, whatever. It's always lovely to have you join me. Till next time, bye!